Well, good morning. Can everyone hear me? Alexis Stokes, and I have the privilege of serving as the Dean of the Bill Monday School of Business at St. Edward's University. And we're delighted to have you here today to learn about how higher education is partnering with industry to build and support a talent pipeline for international business and especially transatlantic business. I'm joined today by Dr. Sam Greer. And Sam, I'd like you to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about what you do at Austin Community College.
Hello, everyone. I am Sam, and I am our Director of Employer Outreach and Experiential Learning Programs at ACC. And I have several of my staff over there. What we run are all of the external learning programs for the college. And this semester we had, I've forgotten, but I think it was over 5,000 students. We have over 1,000, about 600 interns, over 100 apprentices, et cetera, in service learning, which is where an entire class is assigned to a nonprofit or government agency for the semester to work on a project. We had over 2,000. And then all of our clinicals, which is, of course, health sciences in the hospitals doing clinicals and whatnot. Typically, it's over 10,000 students a year. What we do at ACC is train we provide skilled labor, generally for the local market. I've been attending this event for the last 8 years and have placed numerous logistics supply chain students with European companies who are doing business here, visual communications, marketing, various types of management students, and these are people who logistics supply chain can become customs agents, et cetera. So, and I forgot, umpteen computer programmers, cybersecurity, et cetera. So we are basically the muscle and sinew of the economy as far as the entry-level labor market. And so we have, and again, we've had a robust relationship with the membership of the Texas EU Business Summit for not quite a decade. So that is what I do, and when I say I do it, it is really my my internship and apprenticeship coordinators, my service learning coordinator and staff, et cetera. They actually do the real work. I just get to sit up here and brag about it. And anyway, so that is my spiel and what I do. I also work with I'm a liaison between our academic programs and the local economy as far as recruiting employers to sit on our industry advisory committees to make sure that our degrees remain market relevant. And they're not becoming antiquated. So there you go.
Thank you, Sam. And similarly at St. Edward's University, and by the way, we have a strong partnership with Austin Community College because St. Edward's is the #1 private school transfer destination for ACC students in Texas. At St. Edward's University, all of our students, 100%, engage in advanced experiential learning, usually in the form of internships. In the business school, that means 100% of our students do at least one internship. Most do 2 or 3 before the time they graduate. But we also engage in other types of experiential learning, including, very importantly to St. Ed's, study abroad and exchange programs. At St. Ed's, where our motto is Take on Your World, and where 15% of our students are international students, mostly from Europe, we find that our students are globally engaged and really benefit from those connections, and then they use that experience to help build not only their credentials, but their worldviews to be effective contributors in the global economy. So we're going to kick it off with a few questions to talk about how our institutions are examples of partners for industry in preparing a global talent pipeline. And we obviously do that in different ways, but I think what is really critical here is to explore the opportunity for additional industry higher ed partnerships that can meet your needs in industry, that can attract direct investment to Texas, but that can also help ensure that we are engaged in really healthy global collaborations in both directions. So let's start, Sam. From your perspective at ACC, what is the most critical talent gap you are seeing right now? Is it skills, scale, speed?
It's definitely skills. The the scale, Austin has never had a problem. Well, I say that. We did 15 years ago have a problem with computer programmers because Visa and General Motors moved into town, and they got tax abatement if they hired locally, and they each needed 700 programmers, and ACC was putting out about 100 programmers a year, and UT was putting out another 50, and they freaked out. So we have had some scale issues, but typically speaking, Austin has become such an economic dynamo that it attracts all sorts of labor, and so we don't really have the scale problem. What we have is the skill matching, because the economy is changing so fast, and this is not news to anybody, right? It's just that we're having to constantly amend the curriculum to meet the needs of the employers, and and playing catch up to a certain extent. So I would say that the main thing has to do with skills. The speed, we'll talk about the hiring process in a little while, but it's the speed is an issue in and of itself. But I don't think that we can solve that part. But as far as the speed of hiring, but I would say skills is the main issue that has to be addressed.
Yeah, and I think at St. Edward's, like all of us, we're struggling with, or we're challenged by, we're not struggling, but we're challenged by the rapid innovation, especially with AI, and making sure that our students have the skills to contribute immediately in the workforce, while at the same time having the critical thinking, communication, and capacity for lifelong learning that will help them be successful 20, 30, 40 years down the line. So we're trying to find that balance between upskilling students to make sure that they're ready to contribute now, but not being overly reliant on teaching today's technologies, knowing that the technology is changing faster than we can teach. And so that's a challenge for all of us, I think, in terms of the match between meeting employer needs now, but also wanting to ensure that our students are prepared to be strong contributors and leaders, especially in business, for the next several decades. And so that's a challenge that we have. Yeah, you have a question?
You mentioned the pace of keeping up, and that there was a little twitch to your comment there of the rapidness. Can you kind of give us some insight into both of y'all, the level of integration it's going to take to stay in sync?
Well, that's a great question, and we're going to dig into that in a little bit in terms of what sorts of industry higher ed collaborations are most effective for that purpose. So if we can hold on that, I promise we'll circle back, because that's an excellent
We've got
question.
a spiel ready for you.
Yeah, we're getting it ready. Well, so let's segue a bit, and let's talk about what real alignment between universities and higher education institutions and industry actually look like when they work well. This is something you have a lot of experience with, Sam.
We do. And actually, Andrea and I were talking about this yesterday, as far as we have numerous collaborations, and we're extremely flexible. We have over 2,000 local registered employer partners at ACC that have actually completed paperwork with our office and said that they are interested in hiring interns or developing an apprenticeship program. And what we do is we go in and we talk to them about exactly what it is that is needed at their place of business. An internship is the last class that a student takes. They have fulfilled all of their academic requirements, and then they are stepping off. This is their the transition point entering the economy. So employers treat it as a try it before you buy it. An apprenticeship is actually an employment status where the company sends their employee to ACC for the related technical instruction or other types of training. So we have very involved relationships with Tesla and Samsung, for example, in the advanced manufacturing space. And the company has determined we show them the curriculum that we have, the options. They determine what the guided pathway that their student is going to be on, and then choose it. And then they pay for the student to go to school at ACC. And again, we're taxpayer supported, so a class is only about $300 a semester. You can get an entire degree for $5,000 at ACC. So, so what we've done is, and what Andrea's job, she's the apprenticeship coordinator, she actually works with companies to develop these exact types of relationships. And that is everything from working with hospitals and healthcare providers, we have logistics supply chain, we have state agencies, we have, again, the IT industry, accounting, et cetera. So it's across the boards. And the advantage of the apprenticeship model is, in this day and age, it really fosters a sense of loyalty, and it gets the students in early. They're earning, it's an earn and learn program. They have no debt, et cetera. And it is a very close linkage between the college and the employers. So, and one issue that Charla found out at a conference recently, actually it was last year, but then reiterated again. Charla is our internship coordinator. She went to a conference and indeed was the speaker, and in, say, January of 2025, a typical company would get, an entry-level position would have about 200 to 400 applications a week, and you keep it open for 2 weeks. You have a manageable number. It's very easy to separate the wheat from the chaff, right? Starting in about March of 2025, they started getting over 1,000 applications a week. They were all perfect, and the cover letter was all identical. And now she has reported, Dell is reporting, that they get over 10,000 applications, and the same thing. So their HR department has just broken down. The old way of hiring is completely inadequate now, but in the age of AI, and so we need those personal connections about the internships and the apprenticeship programs, where the employer, there's a level of trust in the screening process on our end, and then also we don't just assign a student to them, they still have to hire them. And that they are developing ever more sophisticated touch points that they can monitor the talent flow. So anyway, so we have numerous ways that we partner with companies to get them the exact types of employees that they need.
Yeah, and at St. Edward's too, we look at we use a lot of different models. So as I said, all of our students do internships, and to your question earlier, I think those internships are really critical at ensuring students are learning the skills that employers need in a very experiential way to be prepared for that first, quote, real job. And at St. Ed's, with all of our students doing internships, they leave our university very well prepared for that. But we also know that given the rapid pace of change, especially with technology, that we need even stronger partnerships that are perhaps even more proactive and earlier on the curricular side. So one thing that we are embracing at St. Edward's is, co-designed curriculum with industry. And I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. We've sort of piloted it in some areas where we've worked with industry partners to develop the coursework that's actually within the major, the student's area of study. I think we need to be doing a lot more of that, frankly. It goes way beyond just having, guest speakers in the classroom. That we do every single day at St. Ed's. We're so easy and accessible, located in South Austin, very convenient. So we have a lot of corporate presence on our campus. But where we really need to be, I think, more proactive and engaged for everybody's mutual benefit is in involving industry in the curricular process. And I will say, and this is where, we're just being a little vulnerable, on the academic side, that's not always a really comfortable thing for faculty, for academics to embrace, because academics consider themselves subject matter experts. And at St. Edward's in the Bill Monday School of Business, 100% of our faculty have industry experience. So they're coming with some really solid credentials, but in some cases that industry experience is not particularly current. And so that's where we really need those strong industry partnerships and in a collaborative way to develop curriculum even 2-3 years before the student gets to the internship stage to make sure that what we are doing is actually relevant. So we're making some progress there, but when it works, it's really effective. We also really welcome again other sorts of credentialing, embedded credentialing programs in our curriculum. At the Bill Mundy School of Business, for example, by the time a student graduates, they will have earned 30 industry credentials. That's new this year. We were sort of building up to that, but we're now there. One thing that we're working on now with Murtada is embedding, for example, the Export Fellows program actually in the required curriculum for our students. So our students will all have that credential when they leave. That's the sort of thing that we find it really helps our students not just be more employable, but helps again ensure that alignment with employer needs. But again, the technology is evolving so quickly that we can invest in professional development for our faculty and continuous learning for all of our stakeholders, and we still find that it's a lot to keep up with. And one thing I would like to see more, I did this at a previous university, is almost a faculty externship program where our faculty can actually embed with companies and organizations for short periods of time to really get a sense of the day-to-day, and again, ensure that they're bringing that currency back to the classroom. So those are examples of ways that you in industry can help partner with us to make sure that the talent that we are developing really meets your needs long term. So let's talk about how we scale these sort of models, because ACC has done a really good job at scaling locally. St. Ed's is a smaller private institution, and because we're small, we're pretty agile, which is helpful, but still scaling these models without sacrificing quality or becoming too narrowly focused on immediate workforce needs. And I think this plays to the thing I mentioned earlier, the issue I mentioned earlier of wanting students to be employable now, but also successful business leaders 40 years from now. So how do we ensure that we are scaling and at the same time maintaining quality and long-term vision?
Great question. We based our original model on our very successful internship program, which has had a 100% placement rate for all students registered in their departmental practicums for the last 10 years. And so what we did is we recruited the industry partners, and that was the key, is having a sufficient number of employers and having that constant feedback. And Charla manages these programs for about 40 different departments college-wide, and that's everything from, automotive repair and HVAC repair to accounting and computer programming, and as I mentioned, the others, logistics, supply chain, et cetera. Austin Community College has a very diverse academic program. And so we have to remain relevant to get all of those students placed. Then we get, since the pandemic, so this is recent, to your point, we have had to develop more customized training modules and a deeper relationship with those employers about what it is that their specific needs are. And so that is, that's the apprenticeship model as far as developing the related technical instructions. But we also have quasi-apprenticeships with like Tesla. Elon Musk does not like the word apprentice, even though he'll use it occasionally, but he does not like to have the rigidity of that. So he has, so Tesla actually has a more customized training program, but we have thousands of students from there. And so we have, ACC is set up to be instantly scalable. Well, instantly is right, but you get the idea that we can pivot very quickly over the course of less than a year and really build out all of the facilities, faculty, and programs that are needed. And we also can utilize continuing education for customized curriculum Visa has proprietary software that they train all of their computer engineers in, and we send an ACC faculty member there to train them, for example. So we have all sorts of these sorts of things. So ACC is very well set up to provide skilled labor for the local market. Okay, and again, that is our function, and that's our directive from the taxpayers of Austin, is to do that, as well as we are a massive transfer institution for St. Ed's, UT Austin, and Texas State as well. So, but for this purpose, it's the workforce development. So, we are already in a position for immediate scalability, and we can pivot very quickly because of our level of flexibility.
At St. Edward's, our approach is a little bit different since we are a four-year university, and we're rooted in the Holy Cross traditions of the liberal arts. And so liberal arts, has been, for lack of a better phrase, under fire, I think, culturally lately. But where we see the strength of the liberal arts is in ensuring that our students are really equipped for lifelong learning and long-term contributions. And so in the business school, we're very fortunate because our students spend the first 2 years at St. Ed's really immersed in the liberal arts. They learn history and politics and political economy and critical thinking, and they learn how to write and how to speak. And so they get all of those skills that we hope will, those capabilities rather, that we hope will take them throughout their lives. And then we pair that with the second 2 years of a really strong AACSB accredited business curriculum that ensures they have the quantitative skills, the technology skills, and the frameworks and models that they can apply to business decisions, not just today, but in the future. And so I think there's a case to be made for a strong liberal arts education, especially when we're talking about building a global talent pipeline. Obviously, the internships, the practica, the apprenticeships, the co-curricular engagement with industry are really critical at making sure that students are ready to contribute now. We also look at how students can evolve as business leaders to be successful contributors down the line. Let's talk, Sam, about, I think as we explore partnerships, and I spend most of my time, most of my day, meeting with industry partners and talking about ways that we can find some mutual value in terms of supporting our students, but also in terms of supporting the talent needs. As the people in this room are thinking about their own engagements and their own collaboration with higher ed, what works well and what doesn't? And let's put that another way, perhaps. What perhaps are the biggest misconceptions that industry has about working with higher ed? And then conversely, what is the biggest misconception that higher ed has about working with industry?
Okay, I'm gonna get granular here because when it comes to an internship, we need to have, this is the student's first foray into their field of study. We need a mentor, right? We don't need somebody who is planning a 3-month trip to Scotland and wants to just have somebody man the cash register, right? And so I get fussy with employers if they try to do that. And so, there has to be a mentoring component of this, of really developing the student. And back to your liberal arts, I'm going to give a statement against my own interest here. I'm a liberal arts major, economics and history, and we have noticed with just a pure technical training program, there is a void, and in order to be an effective manager and networker, unless you just have the gift, which most people in their 20s don't, but you really do need that broader context. So ACC is developing more liberal arts integration into the curriculum, but again, with 2 years, it's somewhat limited as far as we can't do the same that St. Ed's can do. But I do agree with the importance of that. But as far as what we were talking about,
what does industry get wrong about working with higher ed, and what does higher ed get wrong about working with industry?
Okay, well, that was what you get wrong is these are entry-level students, of course. I mean, entry-level workers. They're students who are completing their degree plan or certificate or whatever, and they might have all the technical skills, but they need to be inculcated in your institutional culture. They don't have any experience. They may have been working at Jack in the Box and going to night school. That doesn't mean they're going to be an effective, that they understand your office politics and how to actually fully integrate into your workforce culture. So that is something that that industry, and we coach them on that as needed. And what do we need to know? Gosh, y'all, we are constantly learning as far as things that didn't work, and it has to do with a constant evolution of having to discern the needs of our employers. One thing that I will say, and my staff are extremely sharp, because we're where the rubber meets the road. But I have had, okay, I might get canned for this, but I have had issues with my ivory tower higher on the totem pole. That it's like, no, employers are not philanthropic. They're not hiring students just to be a nice guy and offer. Well, can't they just hire more? No. So we keep them grounded where we are, as far as having realistic expectations that employers are really looking for a talent pipeline and developing skilled laborers. Skilled labor force, as opposed to, just being sweet and philanthropic and having somebody explore their wishes and desires.
Yeah, at St. Edward's, I think the challenge is always, again, the sort of speed and agility. We're very agile as a small institution, but still we're governed by accreditation standards and the confines of a semester schedule, which doesn't always align with employer needs and interest. And so sometimes there's a little bit of challenge there in alignment. But I hear you. It's about really finding that mutual value proposition. Our interest is in making sure that our students have the best possible outcomes. We do everything we can on our end to prepare them for that. As one example, within the business school at St. Ed's, we have a Career Edge program where 2 to 3 times a week we bring in industry level, C-suite level talent to really workshop with our students the skills they need in the workplace. Everything from conflict management to communication to personal branding, all of those sort of skills that go beyond the actual curriculum in a business school and really more into those life skills for success. And that's been really successful at getting our students prepared for those internships so that they're not walking in with a lack of professionalism, that they have an idea of what's required, and they've heard that directly from industry executives, which is always more credible than me just telling them that, hey, you need to do these things. They like hearing it from the CEO who's been successful and who was potentially going to hire them. But despite that very intentional preparation of students for the workforce, I think we still have a slight mismatch in terms of speed and agility across higher ed, in terms of really connecting students with opportunities and employers with their talent pipelines. So that's something that we're continually working on. And so to that end, Sam, if you could implement one change within the next 12 months, we're talking a little more. 12 months is like really fast for higher ed, by the way. And I always say, I come from corporate too, and in the corporate world, you would be given, 2 days or 3 days, sometimes a week, to really turn something around in a massive way. In higher ed, anything less than 2 years is considered lightning speed, according to our faculty. So within the next 12 months, if you could implement one change to better align higher ed and workforce needs, what would it be?
I didn't read that part. Well, one thing, and this is somewhat mundane, but it's of interest to us, that we have changed this year. Students are required or highly recommended to secure their internship positions before the start of the semester. It used to be that you get in there and you work on your resume, and I could call a state agency director, and he would say, "Oh, sure, that sounds great. Tell him to report to Sally at the front desk on Monday, and we'll get started." Well, now it's about a 30 to 60 day hiring timeline, and that's economy wide. There's no way around it. And part of it might be that AI problem. We don't know, but it takes forever. And so what we need to do is, it doesn't have to do with the employers, it has to do with our students, is getting them in a more professional mindset much earlier. And to that point, we have developed in the last 6 years a very robust service learning program, which is where an entire class is assigned to a nonprofit or government agency for the semester to work on a project. And it started because 10 years ago, we had I had a group of culinary students, and they were all young Hispanic moms, and they did not want to go the Anthony Bourdain route, where you're working until 2 in the morning, and then you go out partying after that and whatever. They wanted to be home when their kids got out of school, and at 3 o'clock, and they were willing to go really early. So I lined up a deal at Central Market through HEB, and they were going to be the assistant manager of the deli or the assistant manager of the bakery kind of thing. And they were all excited about it until they walked in and they froze. And it was in a very affluent part of Austin, and they were very uncomfortable. This was their first foray out of their social silo, and they had some trouble adapting. And it made me realize that we needed to better prepare these students for their professional journey, so service learning fulfills that bill. It is where they report. There is an external executive, like y'all, that they are reporting to. There is a project, their timelines and deliverables, their measurables about the quality of the product. And so it's their first foray into the professional world, and it has been amazingly successful. And right now, again, this semester we had 2,400 students college-wide enrolled in these programs. And so it is sort of if you will, a pre-professional training. And again, you have to appreciate my clientele as compared to Alexis, is that with community college students, that would be the thing that we need, is to further professionalize our students and get them ready for this incredibly sophisticated economy that is outside these doors in Austin. And so that is what we are working on, and we have a variety of programs that my staff and I are working on and collaborating with our Career Center. This is a college-wide effort, but that's what we need to do, is really get these folks focused on that. Since the pandemic, when I talk to employers, the number one issue with students has to do with there's some communication issues, but there's a lack of teamwork and collaboration because the students, they just live on their phones now. And so we are having to meet the students where they are and change some of these behaviors to make them more suitable employees, and we're succeeding. But again, these are the changes that we're having to do. It doesn't have to do with the employers. We meet them where they are. We have to change our students. And again, I'm speaking about our community college students. But again, it has been very effective. But that's what we're up to. That's my 12-month deal. If I could wave a wand.
At St. Edward's, we're really taking some very intentional steps to, again, ensure that our students are ready for those first internships and first jobs. So in addition to the Career Edge program I previously mentioned, where we have C-suite executives coming in to really work with our students on those professional skills, we also send our students every Friday on career treks, where we send them to some of Austin's biggest organizations to meet with people in all of the business fields that all of the different business disciplines so that they can really understand the opportunities behind the brand. For some of our students, they're obviously familiar with household name companies, but they may be less familiar with companies that are important, that are large, that are essential to the economy, but don't necessarily have the glamorous branding. And so for our students to go and meet with folks in accounting and human resources and sales and marketing and learn about all of the opportunities at those companies, that can really turn on some light bulbs and help get students excited about different industries. And so from our perspective, we're really looking for industry partners who are willing to make those investments of time earlier on in the hiring funnel, as opposed to just waiting for the resumes to come your way for the internships. Instead, to say, okay, this is a long game, and especially for students, again, coming out of the pandemic where, we're thankfully cycling through that, but we still are seeing that those last classes of students that were really adversely isolated during the pandemic, but providing those opportunities for them to engage and for them to feel like they can belong in professional settings. Building on Sam's point, at St. Edward's, well, our students come from all over the world in 45 different states and I think 50-something countries now. 60% of our students are underrepresented minorities. And that means that for many of them, they have not seen themselves or seen their family members in professional settings. I can give you one easy example of how I saw that in a very real way. I took students on a field trip last year to an organization, a company that was in one of the big downtown skyscrapers. And it's, like skyscrapers do, they have multiple elevator banks going to different parts of floors. Our students were just awestruck by that and also very uncomfortable. They had worn their best clothes, they were all excited, but they realized very quickly this was a very different type of environment. But the more that we get them into those environments, the more they can practice doing that before actually going for those internship interviews, the more they feel like they belong and they can be successful. So what we're looking for from industry partners is really those relationship building over a period of time where early on students can get access and exposure to the environment and really develop those professional skills at St. Edward's, develop the liberal arts foundation, the business quantitative skills, and then again, the opportunity for internships down the line. But it's a long game. And I think that's what, if I could switch anything, it would be that sort of understanding of, workforce needs are immediate, but at the same time, we all need to be thinking ahead to the next 5-10 years and how we cultivate those pipelines long term. And we think about not just immediate job placement, but the long-term career and the opportunities for again, long-term talent pipeline. So we're so fortunate today to have a very global audience, and there are increasing connections, as there have been for decades, but increasing connections between Europe and Texas and Quebec. We're so lucky to have Quebec here in the audience today as well, in terms of direct investment and trade and really building some global pipelines. Austin, I think, has done a really good job, in part very much led by the University of Texas, our wonderful host today, in helping to build a strong talent pipeline for global industry. But let's think about how Austin can continue to be successful in that front, led by the University of Texas, by ACC, by private institutions like St. Ed's. How can we differentiate further to win the global talent race over the next decade?
Okay, we're not talking about traffic here, are we? No. Okay. Okay. Well, again, as a community college executive, I look at things more from the ground up. We have to settle issues like housing, right, and the traffic and things like that. There are, it's difficult for some workers to travel. Tesla's in Far East Austin. You need to live near there so that you're never late for work, et cetera. So there's some things that Austin needs to do with its infrastructure and policies to further develop that. But as far as the long-term economics, I actually think that we're quite healthy. I mean, we do have I'm a little concerned about water issues, particularly now during the drought, but I think Austin has a very healthy economy. It just has to do with continuing the flow of entrepreneurs into the city, that we need to have more and more larger companies. We need a good balance of companies that are constantly interested in doing business here. And that's from everywhere, whether it's Europe or Quebec or any other state. And so I think that we just need to continue having that excellent balance. And on our end, we just need to continue, obviously, providing the labor. We've been doing it so long and successfully that I don't think that's the hard part. I think it is the harder part is maintaining the mix of employers and not having them, skedaddle to to somewhere that has that has benefits that Austin doesn't.
Thank you for that. And to build on that, I think it's really about investment from all sectors, including government, in education, and not just in higher education, but in K through 12 education as well, because really we start building that talent pipeline very early. And so that investment, I think, is more critical than ever going forward. ACC's funding model as of the past few years of offering essentially free tuition for Austin area residents has been a game changer in terms of accessibility for to higher education. We then see so many of those students transfer into four-year universities, complete their bachelor's degrees, which is amazing. But even if they don't, even if they go straight into the workforce, they are able to be strong contributors with no debt, which is huge. So as we think about how we support that investment, both privately and publicly, in higher education and in K through 12 education, again, I look at this as a very long-term talent pipeline. Austin's done a lot of creative things. We have wonderful world-class universities here. We're sitting in one at the moment, and we're fortunate to have those resources, but those resources have to be sustained, and that requires investment, that requires a strong tax base, and then it's, as we know, it's very cyclical. I'd like to open it up. We have a couple more minutes to audience questions, and I see one right there. Great.
Thank you so much. My name is Andrea. I was born in Czechoslovakia, recently living in Austin, loving it here. And basically, I just wanted to confirm your words, because my career is like 25 years in HR, especially recruitment, and the world has changed. And I can confirm it from the candidates. As soon as I post the job description, whenever media, within a couple minutes, like 3, 4, 5, I have thousands of replies which are perfectly fitting to my job description. So we are not talking human to human anymore, but agent to agent. Mm-hmm. How to solve the whole problem? Because this is, I think, one of the issues that is prolonging the recruitment. The recruiters are stuck with thousands of super-fitting profiles. What I'm encouraging my candidates, list your preferred employers, go there, knock on the door, come back to basics as we has done this like 20 years ago. And it seems that it's working, especially for the small companies. So maybe that might be a part of the solution for the internships, especially locally. And I'm dealing with the STEM mainly, like for my whole career. So.
Well, one thing that both of our institutions do is we screen all of our students before we send them out. Our internship classes are restricted enrollment classes, meaning that the department chair has to approve. And I've been in the computer studies department chair's office when she would not let a guy, he was insisting that he was ready for the internship, and she said, no, you need to take Java 3, and if you make a B or better, then I'll approve this. And so we screen on our end. St. Ed's does as well, that we need to make sure. And then the other thing that we do is we want this to be a very positive experience for our student and for the employer, and that's both of us. And so it's, again, the student's first foray into the field, but we also don't want to burn the employer. So one of the things that employers can do is get in touch with us and our and our offices and get on the list, and you will have a curated list of students. We'll send you 3 or 4, and you can interview them and pick which one you want. That is the old way of doing business that every one of us in the room did when we were younger. We didn't have any bots that were traveling through the internet planting our resume on every single job application that we could find. It was we knew someone, we made personal connections, and so I completely agree. But again, we have the institutional systems that can allow employers to bypass that hideous HR process of trying to hire unknown labor. So I would suggest that you contact us.
Definitely. I will promote it, definitely.
Yeah. I appreciate your point. And to that end, I mean, I think it goes back to the need for us to teach human skills and not just create a bunch of robots, right? So that human skill development is huge. And again, the kind of back to basics, while at the same time making sure that there's equitable access to opportunity for students who, have different personalities and backgrounds and experiences and different comfort levels. So we have a lot of work to do on our end. I think we have time for one more question, and then we can pass on the mics to the next panel.
Yeah, I have a question on mid-career issues. I've worked in government, I've worked in private sector, international, and with the rate of change that's happening out there, a lot of people that are in their 40s, say, for instance, that are finding themselves like at a really dip in their ability to keep up with either the technology or the market or whatever. And have you encountered any formal activities or informal activities to basically reach out, whether it's to your former graduates or whatever, to say, we can help you at this point in your career?
Yes, absolutely. So obviously we have graduate programs at St. Edward's. We have 4 within the School of Business, and we are in constant contact with our alumni and with, we hope, the community as well. We try to make sure that we're being expansive in our outreach to really encourage that lifelong learning, especially when people feel the need to pivot or to change careers. So most of the students in our graduate programs, they're career changers. They're at a point where the path they were on, they decided was either no longer viable or no longer interesting or no longer lucrative, and they need to be essentially upskilled or have a different credential to make that pivot. So that's something that we're very committed to at St. Ed's. But beyond graduate programs, because not everyone needs or wants a master's degree, we are partnering with industry on custom executive education programs, and we are also partnering with local professional and cultural organizations to provide continuing studies programming, non-credit bearing, very inexpensive, very accessible, but that is really meant to ensure that those who need a different skill set or need that pivot can be prepared for that. And so that's something St. Ed's is very committed to. That's actually part of our mission, is to really cultivate lifelong learners. But we know that with things changing so quickly that we again have to keep up, not just at the undergraduate level, but in offering those opportunities to mid-career professionals or later. So that's part of our mission.
ACC has thousands of mid-career job changers, and we are specifically designed for that. About, 13 years ago, I was involved in a program, and there was a decommissioning of soldiers from Afghanistan and Iraq, thousands of them, and they were flowing into Fort Hood. And I discovered that the artillery technicians, the artillery crews, programmed their equipment, they calibrated their equipment using Python programming. And they were perfect. Remember the aforementioned problem about the GM and Visa guys? They needed 1,400 programmers post-haste. And so I recruited them, and they went through accelerated programmer training, and we placed over 200 trained them in and C++, Java, etc. And those are just some of the people, computer engineers walking around Austin today, and they were mid-career. So we are specifically set up for that, exactly what you're talking about. And we see a significant spike in enrollment when the economy goes into recession in Austin, because that's where they come. They come back to school, and this is somewhere where you can quickly pivot, get a certificate or a 2-year degree, and get back out in the economy. So we are specifically designed for that. We do, again, thousands and thousands of students a year come back to ACC.
Well, on that note, I think it's time to turn over the panel, but I want to leave with just words of encouragement for your engagement and your partnership. We are so grateful for all of the relationships we build here in Austin and around the world to help us achieve our mutual goals of creating value and really building bridges across the Atlantic, but across the world as well. So we encourage you to contact either of our offices or to connect with our friends at the University of Texas as well, to build strong pipelines for internships, for embedded course projects, to speak in our classes, to help us develop stronger curriculum or continuing studies programming, and really think about that long-term opportunity to build a strong pipeline. Our students do internships all over the world. We welcome your engagement, we welcome your partnership, and we're really grateful for all of the bridges we're building today and ongoing here through this organization and in Austin generally. So thank you very much.
Hey, give us a call.